Syrian army units are amassing in preparation to liberate Idlib province.
To liberate. So you've got, I don't know how many millions of people in Idlib. It's the last bastion of freedom in Syria. The rest of Syria is either under Kurdish control with the United States backing, or under the Assad regime's control. And I know you can't understand this, but just the fact that in the last, well, since 2011, I guess, is when this all started, you're going to find out that the Syrian regime has killed at least 500,000 people. Maybe upwards of 1 million. I mean, nobody really knows except for the estimates done by the doctors and the coroners. And those estimates put it at 250,000 back in like 2013, just a few years into this war. So how, the fighting's been ferocious since then. Ferocious. And it's all been to take back Syria. I mean, in Assad's mind, until he's taken back the whole country, he feels like he can't vindicate himself to the world. Because once he's taken it all back, and I'll tell you, I mean, let's get a few things straight, okay? What he does is he will retake an area. The people are sitting there with a gun to their head, and he doesn't even have to coerce. If you're already in a place occupied by the Syrian army, you're going to say what they want you to say without even, they don't have to threaten you or do anything. They've already killed like everybody you know. You're going to say what they want you to say. So of course they can very easily produce propaganda. And constantly when I see the stories coming out of Syria of usually they pick a cute girl, because sex sells, and they'll send her into a province after it's taken over. And it's just like you can find a black person to support racism. You can find a black person to support the KKK. Yeah, out of thousands of people, you can find one who's willing to take the money or not rock the boat even and do these things. Now Idlib, and if you look at the areas controlled by the Turks, and by the way, everybody who isn't in Idlib or the area above Idlib is a refugee. They're spread out in all directions from Syria. Millions of them. And they're not wanted where they're at. Now, I don't support the United States doing regime change. I don't support our troops being in there helping the Kurds. But at the same time, I don't support tyrant dictators who kill hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million in this case, but over time, millions of people. I mean, this thing with Assad goes back to a coup that his father pulled off back in, 52, 62, somewhere in there, 63, 64, maybe, I think, at the latest. I don't support these tyrants. I mean, if it's I'm not even sure if you can find a mild dictatorship. I mean, even Gaddafi in Libya killed lots of people and was really, the regime was very harsh for some people, but not very many. If I was going to give kudos to one of these dictators, I'm not sure who they'd be. Maybe Gaddafi. You know, maybe one of the kings like King Hussein of Jordan. But even he wiped out a shitload of Palestinians. And they were, you know, I mean, we all know where the Palestinians, who they were running from, ended up in Jordan and Lebanon. And I've witnessed Palestinian massacres. Well, one in particular. And I still think I heard a very reliable source say they buried 115,000 Palestinians in mass graves after that massacre. But I could be wrong about that. You know, I heard it from around a corner in the hallway of my apartment, and I'm positive 115, and I doubt it was 115 people, because I watched them. They encircled the camps and bombed the shit out of them all day, and then rode over them with bulldozers. And there were for sure thousands and thousands of people in those camps. Now, I don't know how many of them got out. Anyway, my point is all of this tyranny, you know, the only way you could justify it is to say we're overpopulating the world and we need to have wars to just slaughter, you know, thousands, millions, who knows how many millions of people, just to keep the world from starving itself to death. And that would be a really shitty reality if that's what all this killing is really about. Which I don't get it. I don't know what all this killing is about. It does seem to be about competition over resources. Certainly a competition over land. When you have a bunch of Zionist Jews, right-wing Jews, descend upon Palestine and, you know, kick everybody out, they're fighting over land, right? I mean, isn't that basically what's going on, or am I missing something? And, you know, I'm not even going to show you any more of this, because it's just, this is RT, and if you watch Press TV, which I do, which is Iranian TV, it's just propaganda. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, and by the way, Syria is out of 27, 28 million people, 25 million of them are Sunni. Okay? Okay, well, maybe there's a million less of them now, I don't know. It's hard to tell. And there's certainly millions of them having been pushed out of the country. You know, so the Assad regime, yeah, it's a killing machine. You know, in that respect, they've gotten what they want. But they're never going to stop this war. This war is going to go on and on and on until Assad is dead. Because they're a tiny little minority. So, you know, and I don't agree with religious theocracies, you know, running countries like Iran does, but everybody in Iran, practically everybody, is Shia. How are you going to stop a country from becoming a religious theocracy when the whole country is that religion? And so in Syria, you've got a situation where practically the whole country is Sunni, and yet they don't have any power or any voice, and they're constantly murdered and oppressed. Where do you think that war is going to end? How is that war going to ever end? Well, by either killing all of them, which he's working on, or running them all out of the country, which he's almost done. But now all the European countries are trying to force them to go back. Well, all that's going to happen is if you send them all back, which you pretty much have to because Europe is not going to absorb 28 million people or 25 million people, however many there are. So, and what a horrible thing for a few Syrians to take over the whole country for themselves and just keep Sunni around to be cheap labor and farmers. The fucked up world that we live in, right? Anyway, my main point is this stuff is propaganda. All the Sunnis who are on the other side are terrorists. Yeah, they're terrorists because they are upset with being murdered and tortured by the Assad regime and have now dared to fight back. I mean, you can't even be serious about terrorism when you allow it to be framed in a way like that.
Since the last stronghold of jihadists,
Islamist militants. We've got all these wonderful words. Excuse me, wonderful words for what are essentially just people. I mean, I hate to tell you this, people, but you know who these people are that we're calling terrorists? Remember that movie with called Red, the one where the Russians invaded the U.S. and with the help of Mexico and a couple, some kids, some people who I loved as actors, by the way, defend themselves until finally the United States takes back the United States. It was just an obscene twist on reality, something that probably would never happen because we're so militant. And we've got Russia surrounded, they don't have us surrounded. So anyway, that's the jihadists. That's them. That's the terrorists. They're those Patrick Swayze. And I forget what the girl's name was. I think she was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High or one of those movies. They're the terrorists. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's just two different sides. They're invaded and taken over and trying to fight back. And of course they call on anybody who will step in and help them, whether it's what we want to call Al-Qaeda that doesn't really exist. Al-Qaeda is one guy running around somehow able to evade all of our assets. The one who used to be seen in the tapes with Osama bin Laden. And ISIS. What's ISIS? The guys who ran away from Iraq after we just wiped it out. What's left of the few, what we called Al-Qaeda in Iraq. The Syrian people, of course the Syrian people would accept them to try and help them liberate the country. Because, it's not like a bunch of Syrian farmers know how to fight. So they get all these Muslims from Iraq flooding over the border trying to escape the U.S. Army. Of course they're going to join up, hook up with them. And yeah, they suffered a lot at the hands of those people because they were, made vicious by the U.S. invasion of Iraq. There's a lot of pieces to this, and most of you don't understand it. And I understand that you react to me very quickly with the propaganda that you're used to from the U.S. government and the mainstream media. But you're going to find out I'm right. I'm right about all this. I have no love for Muslims. The Shia, from time to time, made my life hell in Lebanon. I was their neighbors. We lived right next door to a bunch of Shia. We were right on the edge of a Shia enclave. And one last thing I'd like to mention about all this, because I think it's important that you know these things, is that we're supporting the Kurds in Syria militarily, right? The U.S. basically, with the Kurds, controls, the eastern part of Syria. And I just saw the other day about a protest in that area of Syria by Christians because the Kurds have been burning their churches, and this is the Kurdish military, basically government, that we protect and that we supply with weapons. They've been burning Christian churches, and I have no love for Christians either. I don't like religion at all. I agree with John Lennon, imagine no religion. But they've been burning churches, and then, of course, the Christians protested, and I can find you the video. That's not hard at all. It's around. As a matter of fact, I think it's in yesterday's news playlist that I've already posted. And so they started protesting, and the Kurds shot at them. I don't know if they killed anybody, but they fired a lot of bullets, and I'll throw that video in if I can find it easily. I'm not going to look for it all day, just so you can see it.